and we've got a couple of governance reports. So members, by show of hands, can we adopt the agenda? Thank you, Mr. Pokula. Thank you, Madam Massetti. Thank you, Madam Swia, Mr. Kize, and Advocate Sitole. The agenda is so adopted. Thank you, members. With that, if we can then, members, go through to agenda item number 4, which is a declaration of interest. I'm not sure if there's any if there are any verbal declaration, members, by show of hands, if there's any member that has got any item that they want to declare or any issue that they want to declare verbally. If not, if you can just kindly assist by completing the form and sending it back to the Secretariat, Mr. Mabunda. That also applies to members of staff and management that are actually handling any of these materials. If you can just maybe just complete the form and send it back to Mr. Mabunda. With that, we can then go straight to agenda item number 5, Mr. Mavuso, and hopefully your connectivity has improved. Mr. Mavuso, over to you.
Chair, can you hear me, Chair?
It's better, still cracking, but it's better.
Okay, I'll then change the device after doing the intro on this one. This one will be presented by Tamai and Nukanya. It's the applications as Ms. Smith had introduced the topic before the meeting, and it's Paris Solar Power, and also they are applying for this refinancing procedure. We have mentioned, Chair, that this refinancing procedure stems from the issues that are related to the fall in terms of the the cost of the technology, which then results to the change in some of the financial arrangements like net present value and internal rate of return. But I'll ask Kamai to just present the actual submission itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hole. Over to you.
No, Kanya, can you come in, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll be presenting this one. No, I'm Nokanya Msweli. Chair, this is an application for a tariff reduction and the amendment of the power purchase agreement for Aries Solar Power, as Mr. Mavuso has mentioned. Aries was issued with a generation license in April 2012 as part of the first bid window project, and they have been operating since January 2014. So basically, the tariffs for the first bid windows, basic bid window 1 to bid window 3.5 projects, they seem slightly overpriced compared to the more recent projects. This then led to the IPP office implementing a refinancing protocol. Since the implementation of this refinancing protocol in 2020, we've seen 23 IPPs who have come to NERSA to apply for this tariff reduction and have been granted approval. The consideration for the amendment of the existing power purchase agreements is delegated to the Electricity Subcommittee as clause 1.12 of the delegation matrix. Chair, I'd like to request the Electricity Subcommittee to then approve Aries' tariff reduction and the amendment of the PPA to reflect this reduced tariff. Kindly note that the financial information in this application is confidential. And also for the comfort of the members, there is an consent letter that is attached from the IPP office as an extra A. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Ms. Msweli. Members, by the way, before I open it up to members, I think let's be clear in terms of the actual the cause. Maybe let's clarify the issue on terms of the reduction of the tariff itself, Ms. Msweli, as opposed to the improvement in the process which have come with the technology. Because I think sometimes it comes across as if for these applications that the cost of the technology itself that has contributed to this reduction. I assume that the correct reason is it's the first one, which is the reduction in the risk premium and so forth, or basically the reduction in the cost of finance. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairperson, that's correct.
Okay, thanks, ma'am. So members, if you can engage with the document, any questions, comments, guidance, by show of hands? It seems clear enough, Mr. Msweli. So members, with that, can I then take you to the decision that is sought? It's on the overstamp page number 5, page 5 of 16. And the decision that is sought is on paragraph 14. The electoral subcommittee, having been duly delegated, is requested to approve the reduction. As indicated, the numbers themselves are confidential, but it's basically numbers if you are considering the 2021 base year, it's that reduction, and also they are asking for an amendment of the PPA to then include this new tariff for ELS solar power. And also they are requesting that the ELS also approves the inclusion of the reduced tariff in the PPA between ELS solar power and Eskom. By show of hands, members, if we can approve that. Thank you, Madam Maseti, Madam Spear, Advocate Sithole, Mr. Bokula, Mr. Mkhize. Mr. Msweli, you've got your decision. If we can then move on to the next one. Item 6.
Thanks, Chair. This one will be, it's very similar to the first one, and it will be presented by Eva and Tamai.
Right. Mr. Hore, I assume that Eva is going to be presenting it.
Sorry, Chair, she is having some connection problems, but this is another application. It's similar to the first one. Actually, they are owned by the same stakeholder, and the decision that we are also seeking for Congolese solar power is as per which paragraph? As per the submission. I think without taking the members' time, we request that you approve the tariff and the amendment of the PPA. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hore. Members, it's a similar submission. By show of hands, if you have got any comments, questions. Doesn't seem like there are any questions, comments, Mr. Hore. With that, members, again, it's a similar request in terms of the approval that is sought from the subcommittee, which is duly delegated to deal with this matter. It's the tariff reduction. Again, it is the numbers themselves are protected by confidentiality, and it's the tariff itself, and for the amendment of the PPA, and that this new tariff be included in the power purchase between this entity and Eskom. By show of hands, members, if you can approve that. Thank you, Madam Maseti, Mr. Mkhize, Madam Spear, Advocate Sithole. I'm missing Mr. Bokula and Mr. Mkhize. Or did I see them? Okay. No, thank you, Mr. Hore. You've got your decision. If we can then step off this one and go to agenda item number 7. It's still one of yours again, Mr. Hore.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This one is now a little bit different from the previous two, and this application for Umuelanga is for the change in project specification and the tariff reduction. Umuelanga is one of the projects that was licensed under the risk mitigation independent power producer program. Members would recall that when these projects were selected as preferred bidders, the projects were not yet fully developed since it was an emergency procurement program. The RFP, however, had promised the preferred bidders that they can change the specification as long as it satisfies certain criteria, as highlighted on paragraph 4.1 of the submission. And basically, it just had to deal with the technical abilities that the project had to actually comply with. And the requested changes are on table 1. If you look at table 1, it's basically the reduction in the solar capacity. I just tried through just to show in track changes to show the changes, but on table 1 itself, those capacities are not confidential. So the solar PV capacity is being reduced from 138 megawatt to 115 megawatt, and the onshore wind is being reduced to 63 megawatt from 77.8 megawatt, and the diesel generators were completely removed. Now, with these changes, it also resulted in some changes in the charge rates as contained on table 2, and those charge rates were actually reduced. All the figures are confidential. I realize that some are not highlighted, but all the figures are confidential at this stage. What actually changes quite a lot on table 2 are those the resulting reserve rate for variable O&M, as well as instantaneous reserve response for the variable O&M as well. Those charge rates are the ones that changed quite a lot. And it's also understandable because the diesel generators, which actually have got more O&M cost, were actually replaced by the battery storage. So members will request that you approve the submission as contained in the document, the draft decision on 1 to approve those changes in technical specification, as well as approve the charge rates that are on table 2 and approve the inclusion of these new charge rates and specifications in the power purchase agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hore. Members, any questions, comments, guidance, by show of hands? Again, Mr. Hore, seems like your submission is clear. There are no questions or comments. So members, can I then take you to the decision that is sought is on paragraph 14 again, and the ELS being properly delegated to deal with this matter. I won't read it into records. Mr. Hore has indicated all of the changes that are sought on in this particular case is table 3 and table 4. And then the inclusion of these new charge out rates in the PPA between Moilanga and Eskom. By show of hands, members, if we can approve that. Thank you, Madam Massetti. Thank you, Mr. Pokula. Thank you, Advocate Tolo, Mr. Mkize, and Madam Sbia. Mr. Hora, you've got your decision. Back to you, Mr. Mavuso. By the way, your connectivity did improve greatly. Back to you.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, agenda number 8 is the one that is going to be presented by Mark. Thanks.
Over to you, Mark.
Good morning, Chairperson, members and colleagues. I'm going to take the item as read, and here I'm referring to the resubmitted item 8, which was also divided into parts A and B for board pack purposes. However, there are a few aspects that we would like to highlight. From the start, let me indicate that the presentation addresses the regulatory construct that underpins the electricity pricing rule, referred to as the rule hereafter, rather than the rule itself, which is covered in the submission and the attached RFD in more detail. Firstly, to remind ourselves of the journey that got us here. In July 2021, the ER approved the ELS strategy, incorporating the pricing review as a prioritized strategic project. This project was implemented under the strategic objective of improving systems and tools towards improved regulatory efficiency and stable electricity prices. In December 2021, the ER approved the pricing principles that would form the bedrock of the rule before you, and which are largely the fundamental themes of the electricity pricing policy of 2008, the EPP. The ELS approved the publication of the methodology for public comment in June 2022, and in parallel, we hired consultants with international and local electricity sector experience, and their brief was to develop a regulatory report assessing the pricing principles with recommendations for improvements. In addition, we hired a legal drafting expert with over 30 years experience in constitutional and energy law in South Africa and across Southern Africa to advise us on the operationalization of the pricing framework within the South African legal context. However, we are aware of the fact that we are operating in a changing electricity ecosystem and therefore took cognizance of the following. Parallel to this journey, the electricity industry is facing converging headwinds, such as a stressed system and structural changes to the sector. Top of mind for most stakeholders is the worst load shedding in a decade. However, the unbundling of Eskom also took a lurch forward with the regulator decision to award a transmission license to the National Transmission Company, South Africa. On the demand side, deindustrialization has triggered weakening demand and exacerbated uncertainty about demand as consumers respond in the face of unstable prices and supply. Consequently, there are areas where enhancements have been implemented since the principles were first published as follows. The underlying principles that were approved in December 2021 have not changed. However, the activity-based costing is applied now through the system of regulatory accounts and the cost allocations that are derived from them. Different loads have different costs, in quotes, remains the rationale for understanding consumer demand, as outlined in the EPP. This is central to understanding the different load factors, subsequent costs imposed on the electricity system, and the electricity price affordability of consumers. Finally, C, the third principle, marginal pricing. This is going to be affected through the proxy of a weighted average tariff, for as long as there is no functioning electricity market, when marginal pricing will most likely be possible. These principles have culminated in the 5 steps pricing approach. Now I'm going to touch on that briefly. The 5-step pricing framework is the backbone of the rule. The first 3 steps involve 1, unbundling the value chain into licensable activities in compliance with the EPP and the Electricity Regulation Act, or ERA. 2, the collection of ring-fenced accounting data, i.e. the costs to supply electricity. And finally, 3, the functionalization, classification, and allocation of these costs into various cost-reflective tariffs, but also unbundled reflective tariffs for each licensed activity. I would like to draw attention to 2 aspects, namely that for licensees to submit their regulatory accounts, i.e. in the form of the RRMs, Volume 1, and the associated CAM or cost allocation manuals, the data should be readily available in the accounting systems of licensees and simply needs to be reorganized into regulatory accounts. Such an approach is supported by the EPP in section 2.4, where it is stated, and I quote, accounting ring fencing, i.e. regulatory accounts, is the first step towards achieving accurate transparent and unbundled accounts. I now want to take members a bit more closely to the last 2 steps, steps 4 and 5 of our 5-step process. Step 4 focuses on the drivers of demand and has been significantly refined into 2 sub-steps, 4A and 4B. 4A addresses the need to understand load profiles, the costs they impose, and the data required to assess this. 4B revolves around understanding the needs of consumers and the affordability of the Step 3 cost-reflective tariffs I mentioned, relative to their underlying income and or cost drivers, and that will form the basis for a subsidy framework as prescribed in ERS Section 15E and also found in the EPP. The fifth step in the pricing approach revolves around the discovery of the consumer prices from the cumulative prices from the first three steps. So from steps 1 to 3, we end up with tariffs, we now add them up, and then we add the various imposts, such as surcharges, etc. Step 5 has also been enhanced into 2 sub-steps, namely 5A and 5B, as follows. 5A involves setting the baseline prices from the cost buildup of the weighted average generated tariffs, plus the transmission tariff, and where applicable, distribution tariffs. To this base price, any levies, as outlined in the rule, surcharges, subsidies, etc., are recognized. This baseline consumer price reflects the unbundled cost to serve, as required by Section 15C and the EPP Section 8.9. As a compromise on the contentious issue of the type of use prices, the system price to meet the total consumer demand at any point in time will be applied via the proxy of time of use tariffs, but these will now be cost-reflective time of use tariffs, prices, as required in the EPP Policy Position 32. The rider to this is that consumers or categories of consumers may apply to the regulator with a low-profile evidence, as from Step 4A, for a price consistent with ERA Section 15C that reflects their cost their load imposes on the electricity system. Such a price would align well with the EPP, which states that recognizing different load factors, and I quote, tariffs need to be differentiated by type of usage profile and by the type of customer. Finally, we go to Step 5B. This is where that cost-reflective price from 5A is then assessed against the affordability criteria from Step 4B. In other words, in terms of the income and the cost drivers, etc., of the consumers, to develop cost-reflective subsidies that clearly reflect where the over-recovery from one consumer or category of consumers can be used to cross-subsidize those consumers that cannot afford cost-reflective prices. These are inherently internal subsidies, i.e. they're internal to the electricity system. However, the regulator can also use the data from steps 4 and 5 to advise other sector ministries on the need for and the level of a subsidy, and as the basis for an external subsidy framework, acknowledging that this will remain the prerogative of those policy ministries. Finally, we have listened to members, and especially at the ER of the 26th of October. We subjected the submission and its annexures to a review to clear up drafting gremlins, tighten up the content to improve readability, and cognizant of NERSA being a creature of statute, provide clarity on the alignment with the EPP and the ERA. The uploaded resubmitted documents reflect the track changes for members to quickly locate any amendments for easy reading, noting that the core of the submission and its annexures remain the same, i.e. to seek members' approval to recommend the electricity pricing rule to the ER for a decision, along with some planned activities to enable implementation in 25-26 for noting. And more specifically, on page 8, I take members to page 18 of the submission, and also page 18 of 330 of the green overstamp numbering, to request the electricity subcommittee to recommend to the energy regulator to 1711 approve the ERA Section 35 electricity pricing rule, the rule, as attached as Annex A, and apologies for that being a typo of B, and 1712 approve the electricity rule reasons for decision in Annex B, and 1713 notes the electricity pricing rule, which involves an ELR capacity assessment in 2023-4, and the stakeholder readiness planning in 2023-24-25, and also notes that the rule will be implemented in financial year 25-26. Thank you, members, for your attention, and we look forward to comments and feedback in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierre. for the presentation. Thank to you and the team. I know you're presenting on behalf of the team. Members, you've got the presentation before you. I think it has been an elaborate presentation. It's a significant item, so hence I've allowed that at least they present it fully. Any questions, comments, guidance? Show of hands, members. Thank you, Madam Assetti. You can go ahead, ma'am. Madam Assetti. Madam Assetti might be struggling with her connection a little bit. Can I maybe just then take Mr. Mkiza first? I'll come back to you, Madam Assetti.
Yeah.
Now I can
Chairperson.
hear you. Now I can hear you.
Thank you, Mark, for the comprehensive presentation. Oh, can you hear me?
You're breaking, but now at least we can hear you. You're breaking, madam.
Oh, thank you.
Would you mind?
I'll come after
Mr. Mkiza. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mkiza. If you can go first now.
Thanks, Chairperson, and thanks, Mark, for the presentation. You would appreciate that one has had some sight of this of the submission. Just like to highlight a few things. Maybe I hope that the language editing, etc., is going to still happen. Just for me to understand here, in terms of when one looks at the definition there of act, I think we just need to look where maybe you can say where the context allows, because you'll have, for example, a situation where you want just to talk to the act without the regulations and the rules or codes made there under. So if you can just consider that. And then I was not so sure if it's fine to still have a price determination methodology rules, or to just have them as electricity price determination rules. If you can just assist me in the naming, if there's going to be any restrictions as such. And then under unbundling, in the definition, I think you must, why not include also the revenues and say they are associated revenues and costs, if you were to include that. And yeah, I understand this has been written. I would also like just to get confirmation from LAS if they are fine with the legalese in as far as these rules are concerned from their side, just to get that as our experts in this space. As I said, Chair, I've had a look and did make some comments prior, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkiza. Can we try Madam Assetti again?
Thank you, Chairperson. Can you hear me?
Much better now. Thanks, ma'am. Please proceed.
All right. Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I would like to start off with the definition of a price. I just want to find out whether is there a specific reason why we expand on what it means here, the way that we have defined it here. I think for me it's a little bit complicated. I couldn't understand that aspect where we even add tariffs there, and one goes to the definition of the tariff and you look at what it means there. But what I would like to understand is whether there is a specific reason why it should be different from the legislation itself, the empowering provision of the Electricity Regulation Act. Why do we expand on it? What's the reason to expatiate the definition of price there? And then the second thing that I wanted to come to is on the principles of discrimination or anti-discrimination. I just wanted to make a suggestion that perhaps we could just cross-reference to what is meant by price discrimination in terms of Section 22, Sub 2 and Sub 3 of the Electricity Regulation Act, so that it is very clear what are the things that we are trying to sort of regulate and the scope of it. I think it will assist if we can just mention it here, the principles of discrimination or anti-discrimination, but make cross-reference so that we don't create a different standard here from the standard of the empowering provision of the Act, so that it is clear that we mean the same thing. The third thing that I would like to raise, Chairperson, is on that issue of ancillary. Do we really have to have ancillary charges here? Do we have an idea of what are those specific charges? Because if we have already provided a number of these charges, as we did there, your capacity charge, your availability charge, which mean the same according to these definitions, and there's also administrative charges. Do we also have to really provide for ancillary service charges? Because sometimes these tend to be exploited by service providers. We know that we have some challenges with the charges. That sometimes licensees tend to add outside of what NERSA has approved, and obviously is in terms of another legislation, but again, it becomes charges that are associated with the cost of providing electricity, which is where the trick is, because now we don't have powers there. It's like it's a charge that is determined by another legislation, but is connected still to the cost of electricity, which NERSA has powers on. So I'm just asking, what do we have in mind about these ancillary service charges that they may just include after they've done administrative charges and all of the clear charges, and really for transparency purposes, and also for the benefit of protecting consumers in this sense? That's what I would like to find out, Chairperson. And then maybe lastly, Chairperson, I think I would have preferred a situation where I think the sequencing of this process, where we first have, the methodology itself, so that when we look at the rules, at least we can look at them in conjunction with the sections of the methodology, so that we can see how this will work practically. I think for me, it's just the issue of the sequencing, but I hope that it will still. The methodology itself, of course, we still haven't approved it, but I hope that it will still fit accurately within the principles of these rules. That is all from my side, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Assetti. You were still breaking a little bit towards the end, but your connectivity has improved. I guess it must be weather related as well. Mr. Pokolo?
Thank you, Chairperson. I first want to echo what Mr. Mkhize had said. I know Mr. Mark said that this has gone through a language editor. And I just want to demonstrate this. I'm not going to show you all of these other things. If you go to Annex A, the very first page 18 of 120. Now, there is no Energy Regulation Act. There's only an Electricity Regulation Act. And it refers to Section 35. That act does not exist. One that I know exists is the Electricity Regulation Act. I can go through this, and Mr. Gumede, the point I'm trying to stress with this, it is frustrating to read the stuff that gets presented to us. It is frustrating. It is inaccurate. It has just silly mistakes that you don't have to have. And I'm not going to get into all of them when I get into this. And the other thing that the colleagues from electricity do is when you say that there are mistakes, they say, show us those mistakes. I'm not showing you any mistakes. Go and find the mistakes and rectify them. So that's the first point. The second point is just on this. If we then say that this is targeted for 2025, it would be very comfortable for me to understand that, not forgetting the fact that Eskom has indicated that in the current form, the rules that they would not be able to submit an application. But it would be interesting for me to see that if then we're saying that this was going to be implemented in 2025, so that's now the 15th of March, 2025, that we must have approved for Eskom, just for Eskom. Forget about the other entities that we are also saying this is going to cover. When will they have prepared this application in this form? So how long will it take? When we ask Eskom in public forum, they say they can't. So from your planning, when will the Eskom submit this application for 2025? And where's this plan of that? When they submit on this date, this is how we are going to deal with this. And if you look at the alternative plan B, just as much as you have no detail on plan A, you also have no detail on plan B. How will the MYPD be applied to other licenses, as it says there on that? So for me, I am not happy with the submission. Approving the rules that are going to sit there and be gazetted when you don't have a plan is really neither here nor there. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Pokolo. Quite clear. Advocate Sithole.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks to Mark for the presentation. Mine is just one point of clarity that relates to issues of subsidies. Because as we know, subsidies also assist consumers to a certain extent to afford electricity prices. And in the submission, it says that their subsidies may be inadequate at some point in time. And should that be the case, we'll then approach the sector minister on the need to have that. So I was just wondering, because I thought that particular paragraph is just left hanging. It doesn't give me clarity as to what is it that we would be asking a sector minister to do, whether to pass up a policy or regulations or have a provision in the acts, because of the fact that as a regulator, we also have an advisory role to play in terms of advising ministers or a sector minister on areas of our regulatory mandate. If that can be clarified, Chairperson, I will appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Sithole. Madam Spear.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Chair, just one issue of clarity. It is linked to what I'm going to ask. It's the readiness of the industry out there. Because we just recently, it's not for Eskom. We all understand that it's for the industry. Is the industry ready for the implementation of this? Part of the question was asked by Mr. Pokolo. I'm asking that in line also with the establishment of the NTC, because that will also be part of the industry. The second issue linked to that is on page 9. Where you talk about within the area called transmission, you also include system operator. Isn't it advisable to show it separately? Because my understanding is that NTC, which has got the transmission asset, does not have the system operator. Can we show it separately, or is it me who can't remember clearly? I remember that the system operator was not within the transmission at the present moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Spear. Colleagues, those are the questions, but can I really just ask? And I don't know how. I know the reason why there was a resubmission was an attempt to correct some of the glaring errors, and there were a number of glaring errors in the original item 8. But clearly there are still gremlins there. Colleagues, this is honestly, we're not here we should never justify that. In fact, what we should always do is to the extent possible, is to we need to establish ways of getting other people to read our submissions. Because clearly, I mean, something like an Energy Regulator Act is, it's not, I don't even know how we could justify that, and let's not try to actually justify those things. Like the language editing has been requested, it needs to come into it. But I do get a sense that, I guess, between the time when these things are drafted and when they are submitted, we perhaps don't have enough time. But clearly, please don't justify those. Those we need to find ourselves, we need to fix. And the best way to do it is to give it to somebody else who's going to critique that, who's going to read this with a critical eye, and not to ask the members of the regulators to be editors. But yeah, so I'm just asking that as we respond, please do not justify that. But I can assist with others, colleagues. But can I hand it over back to you, Mr. Bear? I know it's not just yourself. If we can maybe just ask everybody else to assist you. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairperson. And your initial introductory comments to the feedback are noted and absolutely correct. So we will leave that as that. And yes, whilst we did review the document, it hadn't gone to language editing yet. We were, because of the time between the ER and that, so it will happen before ER, definitely. Let me just quickly, I'm just going to go through the comments as they were given and the questions. I think with regard to many of the comments from Ms. Masetti, I've noted them, and I think some of them they do deserve some attention, especially where if there is already legislated definitions, we should avoid trying to build on something that's already there. So, and then, as I say, a number of these I've marked, excuse me, noted will do. So I'm talking about the definition of price, non-discrimination, ancillary charges, etc. We will go look at that and tighten it. With specific reference to the idea of introducing a section that goes into more detail on the 5-step rule, that is also noted, and I think it's a. But the way it was introduced, because we did feel we covered the 5-step rule, but I think what's been introduced by Ms. Masetti is saying it's all very well having the 5-step rule and the rule, the 5-step, methodology and the rule. Can we have a section that kind of brings the two, bridges the two, so we can see how the rule applies in terms of the way the methodology will be implemented? And then moving to Mr. Mkhize, again, highlighted the editing, noted the definition of the act, noted. We'll address that. The issue of unbundling, we will, again, it's one of those issues that I believe we need to address, and it's an enhancement. And the answer is yes. LAS were consulted on the document. However, we had ended up waiting for Mr. Murati, and with him being on leave. So we got our feedback, but it wasn't in time to be able to introduce it. And it largely revolved around expanding on the mandate to set tariffs, to make sure that we linked it to Section 4 of the Act, which is our mandate to set prices, and also to expand a bit on how Section 35(3)K, I think it is, I stand to correction, which empowers us to develop this rule as we have done. Finally, to Mr. Bakula, the language editing, yes, I hear you. We thought we'd caught most of it, but we will definitely make sure that we address that as your frustration is felt sincerely. That is. With regard to the plans, we note that we need that to be expanded a bit more, or not a bit more, or quite a bit more, and therefore we can make sure that that comes to the ER as an amendment. But just to say that the way that the plan is outlined at the moment, that for the next 2 years we will be assisting entities such as Eskom to ensure that they are ready. As we pointed out, much of the information that they will be required to send to us is already in their accounting system. It just needs to be reorganized into the regulatory accounts. And Eskom are aware of this. They've engaged with the regulatory reporting manuals in the past. But we would need to go and explain to them in more detail exactly where they need to address and be able to be ready. And then with regard to Plan B, also the same response. We need to unpack that in terms of understanding where, especially Eskom being one of the biggest players, would be submitting their applications and the preparation that's required for that. And I think it's easier to rather try and explain it verbally now, is to just make sure we attach that plan to the submission that goes to ER, if that's acceptable. Finally, with regard to the subsidies for Advocate Sithole, the external subsidies, the reason it was left reasonably open is because it isn't our prerogative to go into the detail of those subsidies. But we can expand on that a bit. But basically at this stage, we're simply saying if there is no space within the electricity system for a cross subsidy, in other words, all of the cross-subsidy potential has been used up, so to speak, then it might be necessary to go to a specific line ministry that is the custodian of that policy. For example, it might be industrial policy or socioeconomic policy, etc. And that we would then provide them with the data to say, look, we believe that a subsidy is required here, but on an advisory basis. Here's the information that backs it up. And then we would support them to put that subsidy framework together, and in that way, ensure that those subsidies were then applied as necessary. Finally, with regard to Ms. Sabir, I think to some extent the readiness issue, I think I've addressed that in terms of the Plan B, and you did link the two. So I think let's get that plan tightened up and put to you. And then perhaps then the readiness or the process of ensuring readiness will be elucidated. With regard to NTSA, the NTSA license does include the function of the system operator, but with regard to your clarifications, we can tighten that up in the document as well. I've tried to run through as quickly as possible. I don't know if I missed anything, but I'm sure I can jump back in if necessary if we have. Thank you. And I leave it maybe for the team if they've got any additions to make in this regard. Thanks.
Mr. Bear, you have very, very unfortunately, how do they put it? I would have expected a bit more in terms of expansion. So, for instance, can I just give you examples? So, for instance, the question was asked by Marama Seti in terms of definition of price. Why include it? Unfortunately, the Act defines the tariff and the price exactly the same way. It's the charge, exactly the same way. But what we had indicated is that for the pricing, we were then said, and I think it's something that comes from the Gas Act as well, is that tariffs are actually defined clearly in terms of the Gas Act what tariffs are. But prices, what we then, it made sense to then say prices should then be consumer prices. But it's not defined like that in the Act. But for the purposes of the for the purposes of the pricing rule, it made a lot of sense to actually then define it. And in fact, with the amendment, the Electricity Regulation Act, the Amendment Act is that the request is for a better definition of price, which might follow the same kind of thinking which was done for the Gas Act. So that's the first one. But Mark, you're a little bit, I think you could have done better than that. And then in respect, for instance, of ancillary charges, ancillary service charges, at the moment, unfortunately, Madam Massetti, and it's okay if we have one ESCOM basically providing everything, generation, transmission, and distribution, with one, basically, for most of us, with one bundled tariffs, is that these ancillary services are provided by ESCOM. Unfortunately, some people, especially when they then saying we are self-providing, these costs tend to be hidden. And some people don't even see the need that they still need to continue to pay for them. Black Start, and there are lots of this frequency control. There are lots of services that are provided. These ancillary services that are provided, they need to be explicitly indicated. And some of those ancillary services could well be specific to particular customers. Some of the ancillary services may need to be socialized. Others may be very specific to customers. They need to be represented that way. That those ancillary services that are specific to certain group of customers, only those customers need to pay for it. But those ancillary services need to be defined. So, but at the moment they are hidden. They are there. They're just not being explicit. So when you are looking at an unbundled tariff, you need to clearly show the services so that whoever, when they make a particular decision, they may know that, yes, I'm making this decision maybe to self-provide for electricity. However, I still remain grid connected, and for grid stability, whether it's in Asia, I mean, there are lots of these ancillary services. When these are provided, clearly they need to be paid for. And it's not only those people that remain always on the grid that need to pay, but everybody may need to pay for those. But we need to be clearly identify those. That's why the need for them to be specified properly. You asked, Madam, for instance, in terms of the other one, I think Mark has responded to. Going back to Mr. Mkhize, for instance, there was a specific question that was asked here. Sorry, I think you did respond to Mr. Mkhize. But I think when it comes to Mr. Pukula, I also think we could have spoken a little bit better. You see, the issue, and maybe talks to the question also asked by Madam Massetti, the issue with the rule and the methodology is that the methodology includes a lot of things. The methodology includes models, which models still need to be built. But those models will need to be built with the participation of the sector. For instance, if you are looking to build a transmission tariffing model, you need to have NTCSA's 100% commitment to that building of that model, such that when you then, the model itself, the tariff methodology, when it's bedded, yes, at high level, you agree that these costs are allowed and that these costs would be classified this way at high level. But the devil is in the detail. But that detail can only come with the participation of the players. Hence, in terms of the plan, we need to indicate clearly, we need to include the plan, Mr. Pukula, that's very clear, but the plan must indicate that engagement with these respective sectors to be able to then come up with something that's very unique to that particular part of the value chain, including the models that will be very specific to that, including the data, that although the data itself sits in the systems, but when it's extracted from the ERP systems, for instance, it may need to be extracted in a particular format that is very specific to a particular part of the value chain. But the plan itself should detail that, including Plan B. You are correct, Mr. Pukul. It's one thing to say, it's one thing NYPD applied to ESCOM, we've done that a long time. But as with the stakeholders have indicated, including ESCOM, that as far as they're concerned, we could still do the same for the rest of the industry. But the question is how. That needs to be expanded. So we do need to actually put a plan to that as well, just to indicate that level of engagement and who we need to engage and when we need to engage. That talks to the 2025-26 submission by ESCOM. Clearly, the plan B is one that simply says, in the event that with all of the intentions to actually go through this unbundled tariff, including having a specific tariff for the NTCSA, when the period for MYPD6 starts, is that with all of that intention, if that doesn't happen, clearly we must be able to then say, in the background, we must be preparing for an MYPD6 submission. Clearly, that's easier for ESCOM. They've done it many times. But for other parts of the value chain, that would be something very, very different. But the period between a decision that is sought, we need to start firstly building internal capacity at NERSA, because quite frankly, we as NERSA haven't really set tariffs. We've approved tariffs, but the actual setting of tariffs is a particular skill that, yes, our people can clearly easily learn, but it will take some capacitation. But we need to invest time into that. So we need to put that into the plan. But in the event that all else fails, we need to be quite clear to then say, okay, we probably think now it's not going to happen for 2025-26. We need to actually get ESCOM to submit an MYPD6. We need to be able to, in the plan, to indicate when that might happen. So it's really those triggers. We do get the sense, Mr. Pukula. But what we are saying is that this is really just to set the direction. If we approve the overall unbundled cost-reflective tariff approach based on an activity-based approach and regulating an industry rather than companies, is that, and we set ourselves on that path, there is a lot that still needs to be done, but it needs to start. So that's all what this submission is about. But does it need a plan? Definitely, agreed fully. So I'm hoping I have expanded properly to this. So it then answers the question of ready. Right as we speak right now, data is one thing, but in terms of the ability to then interrogate that data, convert it into tariffs, that will take a lot of doing, including the building of those models. That's what we need, but we need to include it in the plan to indicate what are those steps that we need to still undertake and when do we start them. Post, unfortunately, all of that can only start post the approval of this general thrust, but the actual detail will be very specific to each part of the value chain. I'm hoping I've expanded properly. Mark, thanks for your response, but I think it was a little bit kind of there's a word I'm actually looking for, which is, it could have been broader, but it was not as broad as I found. Thank you. Madam Massetti, you want to have a follow-up?
Yes, Chairperson. I hope that you can hear me.
Yes, clearly now.
All right. Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, last time I did say that sometimes we are disadvantaged when you see you had to come so that we can also just maybe have a better understanding of what is the plan within the division. And sometimes when you see these documents here, you do want to get a better sense of the critical processes that should precede perhaps this particular document here. And I just wish that this was all in writing. You see, when the subcommittee processes these matters, by the time we go to the board, to the ER, we are all in agreement and we understand exactly where this project is, what's going to happen in this project, where are these other things that we are not seeing. I think in that way, it makes things much better in the way that the committee is supposed to process these. I'm also saying this, Chairperson, with sort of some reservations with regards to the fact that that plan is not here before the committee and maybe it can only be seen at the ER level. You see, that might be a bit of a tricky situation because it will mean that at the ER, the members of the ELS will interact with that plan for the first time and start asking questions at the board level. And I'm just worried about then the work itself. So maybe it's something that you need to think carefully about that so that we don't then get to a process at the board level of starting to ask questions on the matter that is delegated to the subcommittee, where the subcommittee could have processed it properly together with all of the other documents, rather than for that matter to be seen for the first time at the ER level. I just wanted to also just mention that, Chairperson, in terms of the critical processes and also the plan that we are talking about, so that if then we need to scrutinize that process and see whether this will work and whether will fit or ESCOM will be in a position to actually comply fully, that would have been something that the committee would have given it a thought before it then goes to the ER. I would like the chairperson to just take that into consideration in relation to this particular document that is before us, and see whether maybe those things should not go hand in hand, so that the committee can look at this carefully before it then goes to the ER. Thank you, Chairperson. I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you, Madam Massetti. Thank you very much for that input. It clarifies. Mr. Mkhize, follow up, sir?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the responses. I'm not so sure whether they responded to the issue of being the methodology rules than just being the rules, just to remove the methodology part. I also would like to emphasize, sometimes you sound like a broken record on this. I don't think that it's a matter of personal preference, but I think it's a good practice to say when you are dealing with a small portion of a bigger whole, it's important just to present an overall picture and then move on and look at that portion that you are looking at. Hence the need to have to look at that plan and make sure that the other moving parts are also moving in sync, as you would appreciate when you do in terms of basic project management principles, where you would still have a lot of activities with key milestones, but still know what your critical path is, and make sure that those parts that are lying on the critical path are really moved with speed, because we are also conscious of the fact that we are pressed for time here, and that if there is any hint that things are not going to be done on time, we could have plan B, plan C to ensure that you are on top of the game. So I just like to stress that portion. Secondly, I'm not so sure in terms of if one consider the impact of these rules, whether we are communicating them and having them published for public comment, that there can be holistic input therein. And we may just make sure that we carry others along, and there is a refinement where there should be refinement. And we can, where necessary, we agree to disagree and take our stance as having a final say on certain aspects, but having duly considered all that has been presented before us. I don't remember seeing that part of public consultation. That is just my question in terms of making sure that we tread carefully, and we not necessarily say carefully as if we're unsure of what we're doing, but just from a point of view of being cautious and responsible and adhering to all the aspects of our legislation in taking this aspect forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. I think firstly, can I just start with the issue around the methodology rules? I think that's a very clear one. it's an enhancement. It just should refer to rules. But I think there's guidance that we're hearing. Oh, before I raise the guidance, let me take Mr. Pukula.
Apologies, Chair. I think I'm also being not technologically savvy with this. I keep clicking and it switches off. Chairperson, there's another thing that has to be done. You see Eskom, City Power, City of Cape Town, and a few others have said something that if these rules had to be approved and they had to submit their application according to this, they would not be able to. And that statement cannot just be left unchallenged or not dealt with. So as part of this, I know that we say that they are submitting these things with the RRMs and the other things. Eskom, City Power, City of Cape Town have challenged even the basis of the methodology that you can't determine this before you determine that. Can we have those things dealt with so that as we are required to approve rules, we don't approve something that still those that are going to implement it are unable to do that. I even heard Mr. Bear saying that we will assist Eskom to do this and that. I think we should first assist ourselves before we think of assisting Eskom. I think Eskom would have all of the monies and the wherewithal to do that. First, we need to assist ourselves. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Pukula. I think your input also goes to the guidance that I thought the members, Madam Seti had asked, maybe not explicitly, but I could hear the implicit request. And it was also a request from yourself, Chair, and Mr. Pukula, and also Madam Spear. There's a need for a plan. And it's quite clear members of the committee cannot engage with the plan when it comes before when the plan comes before ER. The members of the ELS must have engaged with the plan before. They must have identified issues. They must have provided guidance, including, for instance, this issue, Mr. Pukula, that we are talking about, Eskom saying they can't provide that information that the rule as it is can't be implemented, which is unfortunate, by the way. Yesterday we actually had at the REC. For me, was a serious mind-opening conversation that we had around the RRMs in terms of what in terms of what that volume 1 is supposed to do, what can be done. Because it was always quite strange to me that in respect of course, to be able to functionalize cost, to be able to classify cost, to be able to allocate cost to different categories, you need that there are two ways, of course. You can always use your financial reports and try to unbundle it. That's it's one way. It's not the most efficient way. The correct way is to actually get the data, because companies run companies like that. There are codes. There are allocation codes. Costs are allocated to each plant at Eskom, to transmission, to distribution. There are those direct costs. Those are in the ERP. They don't need, and it's there. All those that information needs to be done. It needs to be aggregated in a particular way and provided. And it was quite interesting that when we're dealing even with an entity where storage is only but a cost center, it's not a profit and loss center, the detail that they provided in terms of those regulatory accounts, it was reassuring to say, well, it's not just stuff that is done in the US, it can be done here. So I guess what I'm saying, though, those conversations need to be had. But these things need to appear in a plan. And the members of the ELS need to engage with that plan. So my request, members, is that for us having engaged with this and we now have the guidance, it could be, this is a big decision. And yes, there is urgency involved in this, but I think, there is speed. Mr. Mkhize, are you wanting to add something? I see your mic is flickering. Okay.
No, it's fine. You may continue. I'll just come in when you are done.
Okay. Well, what I'm simply saying is that the proposal that I'm then putting, that I'll put to members is that although the decision would be, we would like to actually get a decision today, the guidance is quite clear. Before we go into that, let's get a plan. Let's get an implementation. Let's get this plan which identifies the critical path and the things that need to be engaged, including the actual development of models, including the engagement with all of these licensees that need to be that need to supply. Can we get that plan first before we take this? Before, as ELS, we'll be comfortable to actually make a decision. Mine is to say, I think it's something that we need to entertain. And we still have, for instance, in respect of what Mr. Mkhize was talking about, talking to stakeholders, we had always imagined, envisaged these webinars, conversations, opening up this conversation to everybody, inviting people to actually talk to us in a proper conversation, not just in terms of a public hearing, because we did have a public hearing, but the input on the public hearing is very limited. And also having considered these new proposals in the pricing rule, to communicate that to the public again and have a conversation on that. That is scheduled for the 23rd of this month. Let's have that. But over and above that, I think let's give the team time to then develop the plan, a proper plan, not as what perhaps we do to just to just say, well, the members ask for this, we will then just provide for the sake of providing. We actually develop a proper plan that says, a proper plan that deals even with plan B, that in the event that plan A fails, this is plan B, and we try to detail the actual plan B as well. So that will do. And my request then, members, is that we don't necessarily make a decision on this today. The team has the guidance, and it does give us time also to then do a little bit of language editing prior to us re-engaging again. And that if members allow, can we have a special meeting on this and to engage it? It can be either it can be a special meeting with a view of us being able to meet the November ER. But my suggestion is that we have a special meeting such that we can target the December ER for a decision. If that is acceptable to members, that would be my proposal, members, on this item. So, Mr. Mkhize, you wanted to add something before I put this to a vote.
No, I'm covered by what you have just said. I think it will enable one to also engage where necessary outside of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. So, members, I guess what I'm then asking is that there is a decision that is sought. However, taking into account all our inputs, members, can I then just request that we defer a decision on this? We give the team an opportunity to include or to do this language editing, further language editing that they need to do. But we also we give the team an opportunity to again engage with the stakeholders, be it on a bilateral basis or in this webinar that is planned for the 23rd. But that we then develop a comprehensive plan for plan A and for plan B, which identifies all of the critical elements, and then we can then request for a special ELS, and that special ELS can then deal with this, such that we are then perhaps then ready for the December for the December ER. Would that be acceptable, members, by show of hands? Oh, Mr. Pokula, you want to say something, sir?
Sorry, Chairperson, I don't mean to delay your meeting, but I do want to get from the team, because I've just looked at my minutes. I've raised this 4 times. Mr. Mkhize has raised it 3 times in just the time that I've been here. There must be something that we are not saying that maybe is not understood by the team. Maybe you need. Can we give the team this opportunity to tell us what is it that they don't understand in what we're requesting, or what further guidance is required? But I don't mean to delay a meeting, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Pokola. So, team, and I'm going to go through you, Mr. Mavuso, and you can direct. But the question is that the request by ER of this plan, a comprehensive plan, are there challenges with this in terms of the request? What is being asked for?
Yeah, from my side, I think there is really no confusion on what is being asked here. I think it's incumbent on us to go back and really trust this out. But from my side, and even with the team, when we had discussions, there's not been really any doubts. But I guess we just cannot do it the way the members want it. But I trust that maybe we'll give it the last try. I don't know if Mark wants to come in until.
Mark and Mr. Nteke. On the plan, the issue that is being asked is that, as I said, we need to have, I think the words put, the way Mr. Pukula put it nicely is that, give me comfort that we would be able to actually set process for this industry. So it's the plan must be comprehensive enough, in my opinion, that it must also include the current approach in terms of the distribution tariffs or prices for next year, but have a comprehensive thing that says to members, well, we think we still have control. Now the question is this a difficult thing to do? And if there are difficulties, what are the areas where are the difficulties? I'll start with you, Mark Beck.
I think in this instance, firstly, we did focus on getting the content right for the submission. And I think, yes, as it's been pointed out, the plan should have been added and it wasn't. We have in the past outlined some fair amount of detail in terms of that plan, but I think it's now what's important. It was looking at it qualitatively and maybe to translate those elements of what would in the past were called the phases into an actual proper work plan, so we can actually, as Mr. Mkhize says, we can then see that critical path. I don't believe it's difficult to do, but as has been said on a number of occasions today, the devil is in the detail. So I think for us to then take that opportunity and rebuild that plan that we had touched on in the past and then present that to the members, I think that's the only answer I can give in this. I don't believe it's something not understandable. It's just a case of making sure that we actually spread our focus and make sure we've got all the moving parts together.
Mr. Nteke, want to add something?
No, Chairperson. I think it is clear. Mark has covered me. We needed to provide more details, and I think the focus of the team was more into the content, and apologies for that. So I think the guidance is doable. It's something that we can do. We can provide those details that are required to make the plan much clearer, and not to provide just the broad information. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Maseti, just your last input.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I don't know. It is true that this information has been requested on several occasions. I'm just asking myself, is there an issue of capacity within the division? Because this now takes a lot of time off the subcommittee. We've taken more than an hour. Yes, we understand that this matter is important, but if now we take so much time explaining what is needed so that we can discharge our delegated authority properly in this committee, but then we're not getting the kind of the responses or the information or the work that we expect as a committee after we have requested it, it becomes a bit of a problem and a challenge. So that's why I'm asking the question as to whether we have a resource issue here or a capacity issue, or are the members of the team themselves, because if we are confused from our side and we're trying to get something to understand it, is the division understanding, is it moving together here, understanding what is required? Do they understand what is needed here? Why are they not delivering then to the request of the committee? Are they capacitated to understand exactly that this is the direction that is being taken here? This is what is needed in this industry. Is there a problem within just on the capacity issue, so that we can see then as a committee, what is it that we can do in line with the law, where there are resources that are required so that work can be done? Then as a committee, we can be in a position looking at the law that says provide the resources that are required to the FTRM so that the work can be done. Is there an issue here so that we don't have to come back to this? Or are they themselves not capacitated enough to understand what is being done? What exactly is the issue? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. I think, again, when the issue of capacity, it's also something that's going to have to be included in the plan. But members, I think as captured by both Mr. Bear and Mr. Ntakeni, the focus of the team was more on the content of the regulatory basis for the rule, perhaps, and there was very little focus on the plan, which in terms of the approval, the plan is required. And the team, I think, will definitely put time and will seek assistance where required to then detail the plan. And part of that plan, as indicated, is if there are capacity challenges that needs to be improved, for instance, in terms of us developing tariffing models, that will be indicated in the plan itself, and all of the critical areas. I just ask a plead with the members that let's give the team that opportunity to develop that plan and present the plan to the members at this special ELS, and then we can then interrogate the plan. And people like Mr. Mkhize has also offered to be consulted, I think, during the actual development of that plan, and the team, I think, will actually take up that offer. So with that, members, I think, yes, the other challenges, clearly they are. And also, I think a lot of it comes with change, because we're not on the same path that we were in the past. We are, unfortunately, the industry has changed, and there are lots of changes that there are lots of moving parts. So we need to work with those moving parts, and clearly the team will definitely need a lot of assistance. It's really up to them to raise their hands and say we need assistance here, and there may well be opportunities for help, and that help may not necessarily reside within ELS, within ELR only. That help, we are a broader family, and some part of NERSA have been dealing with the specific issues that perhaps in electricity we are only just beginning to deal with. And clearly we need to be able to leverage, and the team just needs to ask. And I'm really hoping that the team will actually do that, ask for help. But with that, members, can I then go back to the decision that I was really asking, is that we then defer the decision on this. Let's get the team to develop a comprehensive implementation plan, which will then be brought back to the special ELS, and so that at least the ELS can then be in a position to make a decision on this, after which that decision can then be recommended to the ER of December. So by show of hands, members, would we be comfortable with that decision? Thank you, Mr. Pukula. Thank you, Madam Spear. Thank you, Advocate Sithole, Madam Aseti, Mr. Mkhize. So, team, we have a lot of work between us, and Mr. Mabunda, please assist us in getting a special meeting. But we do need to develop a comprehensive plan, and it must really this time really try to be as comprehensive as possible, including engagements with the stakeholders, also including us. How do we capacitate ourselves? How do we capacitate the team ELR, and how do we capacitate the members also in terms of making a correct decision? Thank you, members, for that decision. It was a lengthy one, but I think it was an important. It is an important change, and understandably it takes time. So if we can step off that, then we'll go to agenda item number 9, Mr. Mavuso.
Thanks, Chair. This one will be presented by Dagazini and Tsepo. Just to say, Chair, these applications, the 3 ones that are following, including this one, they have unique features in them that a facility that is already have a generation license is applying to operate a distribution connection facilities. We have not had too many of this, but I just want to say that we have engaged the applicants and really came to a landing where, for example, we didn't think it was complying with the technical and regulatory and legal requirements. But I would ask Tsepo to guide us on the three submissions. Tsepo and the team, please.
Mr. Ramko.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning. Yes, Chairperson, I'm going to present Lilyhoek Solar Facility application. And as Mr. Mavuso has highlighted, the following 2 are similar and they are from the same cluster, same applicant. So I'm going to start with the Lilyhoek Solar Facility application. Chairperson, with Lilyhoek Solar Facility generation license was issued by the energy regulator on the 31st March 2022. Thereafter, we received an application for them requesting a license to operate a distribution connection facility. They opted to build these lines under build, own, and operate, as opposed to build, own, and transfer to Eskom. The length of the line of Lilyhoek is 1.2 kilometer at the voltage of 33 kV. The line runs from that solar facility from the collector to the Lilyhoek substation, loop-in-loop-out substation. And we are now requesting the ELS to recommend to the ER for Lilyhoek Solar Facility to be issued with a distribution connection facility license. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Ramkoka. Members, any comments, questions, guidance on this item? Doesn't seem like there is any. Mr. Ramkoka, it seems like it's quite clear. By the way, do you care to comment that it's taken us a year to process? Any reason?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. I think there were several steps that were process that we undertook. The application was received on the 29th November 2022. It was inadequate because there was no advert. Then the applicant advertised in March, on the 9th of March for 30 days. And then ourselves as NERSA, we advertised for 30 days on the 21st of June 2023. And between the period June to October, I think there was a challenge where the application, the person who was processing the application, there was delays due to him leaving the organization. So there was a challenge there up until it was resuscitated on the 9th October, where corrections were made on the design of the line. That is why the submission is now coming to the energy regulator. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Ramukoka. Anyway, there were no questions from members. So members, can I then take you to the decision that is sought is on paragraph 14? And really we are requested to recommend to ER to approve that Lilyhook solar facility be granted an electricity distribution connection, an electricity distribution connection facilities license with conditions, and also to approve the decision and the reasons for decisions. Members, by show of hands, can we recommend? Thank you, Madam Massetti. Thank you, Mr. Pokula, Madam Svia, and Mr. Mkiza. Mr. Ramokopa, you've got your decision. Can you then step off this one and go to agenda item number 10? I'm assuming it's still yours. It's related, it's very similar.
Thank you, Chairperson. This one is for Klipfontein Solar Facility. Chairperson, similarly, that generation license was issued 31st March by the energy regulator. They came to us, they requesting now to connect that line. That line they want they opted for build, own, and operate similarly. The difference is that the distance from the collector of the facility to the substation is 2.3. With the same voltage, 33 kilovolts. Similarly, we are requesting ELS to recommend to ER for issuing them with a license. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Ramukoka. Members, comments, questions, guidance? Seems quite clear, I guess, similar to the previous one. So if there are no comments, members, if I can then take you to paragraph 14 of the submission on page 404. And just to read it into the record, it is recommended that the ELS recommends to the ER to approve Klipfontein Solar Facility Pty Limited Electricity Distribution Connection Facility License with conditions, and to approve the decision and the reasons for decisions document. By show of hands, thanks, Mr. Mkiza.
No, Chair.
Oh, you have a question. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a problem per se, but I just need to have comfort. I think the same will apply for the next part. Just the comfort here to say, firstly, whether it is the desirable option generally in terms of when one looks at the orderly development, and then in a situation where because this is like being done for the buyer at the end of the day. It's a bought operation. I mean, project under the licensee being the buyer. In legislation there is nothing at all precluding this, and whatever, just that comfort, because it doesn't appear like a very usual arrangement. I just wanted that they could have their own agreements is one thing, but I'm saying now coming to the era, is everything covered here?
Thank you, Mr. Mkiza. I think your question is quite clear. Mr. Ramukoka, do you want to assist?
Yes, thanks, Chairperson. Legally, what we are doing here is been covered. These options, the build, own, and operate options, as opposed to build, own, and transfer, was approved by the energy regulator around 2012, wherein we've stated all the reasons why these pieces of lines running from the generation substation to connect to the grid supposed to be licensed in cases where they are not owned, they are not transferred to the current licensee, which is Eskom Transmission or Eskom Distribution. So legally, we are covered, Chairperson. I'm not sure if I'm clarifying everything to Mr. Mkhize. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Ms. Mkhize, are you covered?
I'm covered then with that understanding. It would help to really. Oh no, it's covered. Yeah, no, I'm covered, Chairperson. Thank you.
All right. No, thank you. With that, members, can I then take you back? Can I then take you to the decision again? It's been read into the record. Can I then maybe just see by show of hands if you can support that decision that is sought on paragraph 14? Thanks, Mr. Mkhize. Thanks, Madam Spear. Thank you, Advocate Sithole, Mr. Pukula, and Madam Assetti. Are comfortable? Thank you, Madam Assetti. Mr. Rampoka, you've got your decision. The next one, again.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. This one is called Sonoblomo Solar Facility application for a distribution connection facility license. The distance is the difference. It's a 2-kilometer distance of line from the collector to the substation at Sonoblomo loop-in loop-out substation. The voltage is at 2.32 kilovolts. Same area, Dallasville, Free State, in the same vicinity, in the same cluster as the other two above. With this application, we are hereby requesting ELS to recommend to ER for them to be issued with a license. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Ramkok. Members, any comments on this? Questions? Specific questions to this? If not, can I then again take you to paragraph 14? And just to indicate here, it's again, the ELS is asked to recommend to the ER to approve the Sonoblomo Solar Facility Pty Limited Electricity Distribution Connection Facility License with conditions, and to approve the draft decision and the draft reasons for decisions. By show of hands, members, if you're in agreement. Thank you, Ms. Spear, Madam Assetti, Mr. Mkhize, Mr. Pukula. Advocate Sithole, are you comfortable? Thank you, Madam. The Advocate Sithole. So you've got your decision there. The last item in our open meeting, item number 12, Eskom's cost of unserved energy values, updated in 2023. Mr. Mavuso, who's presenting this one?
Chair, this is going to be presented by Nobukhanya Ndlovu and Sbusiso Zongo. Thanks.
Thank you. Over to you, lady and a gentleman.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. As we've highlighted, this submission is Eskom's cost of unserved energy values updated in 2023. Where is this submission stemming from? It's a requirement from the grid code, which states that all the licenses must have a NESA-approved methodology of determining the cost of unserved energy. Eskom did develop the cost of unserved energy methodology in 2015, which was approved by NESA, and the review was also approved in 2022 by NESA with the condition that they must submit the updated values on an annual basis. Eskom has been submitting the updated values, and the recent one that they updated in 2023 is summarized in section 5 of this submission. And also, if we can look at section 6, it's also been highlighted that the COU values rose in line with the changes in their components, which is the economic parameters as well as electricity consumption. Maybe just to highlight a couple of things, this cost of unserved energy is used by Eskom in their planning processes, and I think maybe it's worth highlighting that it's not used to measure the cost of load shedding. There is a study that was done by NOVA to estimate the cost of load shedding, and the cost of load shedding will be slightly lower than the cost of unserved, because with the warning of the outages, then it allows the parties that may be affected to put strategies to mitigate the impact. Also, maybe to highlight in terms of the economic COU of the sectors, if one wants to check how important is electricity in these respective sectors, the COU values are not the right variable to look at, because it's a bit disrupted by other factors other than electricity. So the parameter to look at in order to evaluate the importance of electricity for each sector is the actual electricity consumption by the respective sectors. And in line with section 14 of the submission, Chair, I would like, and the members, I would like to recommend that the ELS note the ESCOM cost of unsafe energy values updated in 2023, and also approve the publication of the COUE update documentation on the NESA website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Ndlovu. Members, any questions, comments on the document? Guidance? By show of hands. Well, the document is clear enough. With there being no hands, members can then take you to the decision that is sought, is on paragraph 14. And Ms. Ndlovu has read it into the record for us. Members, by show of hands, can we approve the recommendation as sought? Thank you, Madam Aseti. Thank you, Mr. Pokula. Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Thank you, Madam Spear. Advocate, missing you. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Advocate Sitole. That was the last item on the agenda for the open meeting, and we'd like to thank our stakeholders that have been following us on all our platforms for your continued interest in the work of NESA, and also just to actually for you to actually exercise your constitutional right to be heard, as in Section 33 of the South African Constitution of 1996. We'd like to thank you all and then request that then we actually close the meeting now so we can deal with governance reports. Mr. Mateja, please advise once the live streaming has been stopped. Thank you, Mr. Mateja. Members, can